Hello Penguinauts, I'm the Beardy Penguin and welcome back to Kerbal Rising. Today we are making Planetfall. We are invading Gaia itself, reclaiming the origin of Kerbal kind. For this purpose we are launching a new carrier, but we're also launching a colony ship to begin, well, let's just say, bringing order to the Gaian system. The new carrier is called the ISS Trojan, as named by the person in the comments last time we managed to identify who Preston Kerman was named after. And it is deploying two Elara omni-atmospheric fighters to the surface so that we can bring our message of peace and prosperity to the Gaian system. I promise we're not evil, honest. Anyway, so this operation isn't actually under command of Preston Kerman because he had a bit of reprimanding from the Imperial Council after he kind of came up with a plan to eradicate the entirety of the Gaian populace. Like, I get that the Imperium is a bit morally ambiguous, but we're not the Fourth Reich, okay? We're just going to incorporate the Gaian populace into our war machine by gently coercing them into helping us. And those that resist, well, they'll just simply have the parts of their brain that allow for higher functions just surgically removed. It's perfectly safe. It just turns them into mindless slaves incapable of rebellious thought. You know, most Imperium citizens have had the procedure performed. If it worked for Brave New World, then hey, it can't be that bad. Anyway, so we're just making our entry into the atmosphere with our two Elara fighters. As you can see, they are designed for speed, not so much maneuverability. Now they are very maneuverable, mainly because they're very light, because of course we're using thermal ramjets, and that means that we can use the atmosphere of the planet as our fuel, essentially, passing it in through the intakes, through the reactor, and then out the back, which means we have almost limitless fuel. Now what this allows us to do is carry very, very little liquid fuel on board, making the fighter very, very light and increasing its maneuverability. So once we go through our atmospheric entry, we just regroup with our wingman, get ourselves turned around and start flying towards a Gaian airbase. Now they have two fighter aircraft covering the airspace over their three bases across two continents. So the first thing we want to do, so that we can start performing airstrikes on their ground units, is eliminate this air threat and gain air superiority so that we can operate with impunity. So there we are, just linking up with our wingman, and we sort of overshot a bit, so we're flying about 150 kilometers to the Gaian airbase. Now, as I said, maneuverability isn't really the order of the day, since the wingspan of these fighters is quite narrow. So although they can turn very rapidly, they do have a habit of stalling out if you increase your angle of attack too much. And as you can see, the enemy fighters are taking to the air. However, there's something a little shocking. We can see from the amount of radiators on them and the sheer amount of output and how fast they take off, that these are using antimatter reactors to power their thermal ramjets. And they have a big wingspan as well, and air brakes on top of that. So as well as having antimatter powered engines, which is kind of risky if they get breached, but that makes them extremely fast, and their huge wingspan and combination of air brakes makes them incredibly maneuverable. These things have a range of speeds they can fly at from 400 meters per second, and the acceleration at something like 5 Gs, but with a combination of their large wingspan and their air brakes, they can slow that down to cruise at 30 meters per second, and they're exceptionally maneuverable. Now these Elara class fighters, I tested these a lot, and we throw our initial missiles at them. Well, they throw missiles at us and nothing particularly interesting happens. We have our first high speed pass. But I was quite proud of these Elara class fighters, but these fighters are just running rings around us. As we see, we line up on the first one, loose a missile, and then a missile flies out of nowhere, ripping off the wing of our Elara. I swap to our wingman to see if he's in a better situation, but the second fighter has just got round on its tail. It shot a missile at our first one, and it is just wailing on this fighter, and there's nothing we can do to shake him. Even though they can fly exceptional speeds, they're also capable of just sticking onto our tails, using those air brakes to fly at incredibly low speeds. In the end, I deactivate the AI pilot and take control myself, intentionally stalling out the plane just to get this aircraft off our tail. but there's just nothing we can do. It's stuck on us like glue, and it's even while recovering from stalling the aircraft, the second one immediately gets on our tail. There's just nothing we can do to escape these damn things. They're just running circles around us, and we can't stop the 20mm fire from smashing into us and cutting our plane in half. Credit where credit's due, these Gaians can build some pretty damn exceptional aircraft, and there was just nothing we could do in that situation. We're going to have to return next turn with some better fighters, but look, they're just rubbing it in now, losing a missile to finish off our craft. I guess we kind of have ourselves to thank here. Preston Kerman is very bloodthirsty. He hasn't been accepting Gaian surrender, so I don't think we should really expect them to accept surrender either, and they eradicate our fighter aircraft from the sky. Look at these things. I mean, it's a testament to Tape's Discord. I think Fighter Jet Showdown has just been honing his Discord, so the fighter jets coming out of that Discord are just on another level entirely. So we're certainly going to have to do some fighter development in the meantime. But even though that is a very embarrassing failure, we have another carrier in orbit, the ISS Spirit of Drados. It's been sitting in orbit of Gaia for a little while, and it has got some aircraft on it as well. Well, a single aircraft, a Callisto-class tactical bomber. And this is going to head down to the surface and start engaging some ground targets. Now, we aren't going to be able to run amok and engage quite as many targets as we would have liked, because, of course, the enemy air defenses are still operational. We'll have to take them out next turn. But what we can do is launch a strike at one of their naval bases, the Heart of Gaia naval power, and eliminate the frigate defending it. And that should mean that we are sort of freeing up the oceans of Gaia if we wanted to possibly launch some kind of naval vessel next turn. That'd be interesting, wouldn't it? We'd have to launch a much bigger carrier, though, if we wanted to land a naval vessel on an alien planet. That certainly is an interesting concept, though, maybe for a future video. Anyway, once we line ourselves up, we activate our engines and we start our burn to put us on a suborbital trajectory. These things, well, this thing is a lot more stable than the Alaris. Obviously, it's far less maneuverable, but it uses antimatter-powered engines as well. Now, that is risky, because if you get that antimatter reactor hit, it's going to breach and create a pretty much 1 kilometer wide explosion. So that's why I didn't use it on the fighter aircraft, because of course you're flying with a wingman. If one aircraft gets shot up and the antimatter reactor gets breached, you're going to take out your wingman. But since this is a single tactical bomber, it doesn't have any escort, we might as well use them to get the extra power that an antimatter reactor can produce. And with its pretty wide wingspan, with the wings slightly tilted up, it's very, very stable, and it goes through entry into the atmosphere without any problems whatsoever. We just cruise in, and using our new meta materials, the surface of it can withstand the heat of re-entry without any problems whatsoever. So our target is a frigate with a big naval cannon and some intercept missiles. So we do have some countermeasures, and also we have 4 50 cal turrets on this tactical bomber, which is much cheaper than having 20mm turrets. Now, they don't pack a huge punch, but they're very accurate, very fast firing, and of course we have 4 of them, so we cover pretty much a 360-degree firing arc around our aircraft. So if we get any missiles shot at us, we can activate our countermeasures, including an ECM jammer and of course chaff, and then we can use our 50 cal turrets to shoot down incoming enemy missiles. They're also intended to allow us to shoot down enemy fighters if they manage to scramble in time to intercept us. But thankfully we're well away from the enemy airbase, so they won't be able to do that to us today. We also, of course, have those antimatter reactors, allowing us to get up to some pretty impressive speeds in atmosphere, so we should be able to outrun anything but the largest intercept missiles. So we just get ourselves on course, and we start flying towards the enemy vessel and the naval base it is protecting. The flight is a lot shorter, we're getting a lot more accurate with our atmospheric entry now, and we start lining up our targeting pod to paint a laser designator on that enemy vessel so that we can launch our 6 laser-guided Maverick air-to-ground missiles to annihilate it. Now, these aren't anti-ship missiles as such. They're not going to split the ship in half. They're not quite that powerful. But they are very, very accurate, very maneuverable. They're far less likely to get shot down, and also it allows us to more accurately target the naval vessel. So what we're going to do is we're going straight after the enemy bridge, which means we're going to essentially take out the nerve center of the vessel and render it completely ineffective. Opening our cargo bay doors, and there it is, firing its naval gun at us at a 25-kilometer range, so we have to do some very light evasive maneuvers to try and avoid it. But since it's opening up with its naval gun, the guard mode has been set up with a gun range of 25 kilometers, it's not firing its intercept missiles at us, which means we can fly over and keep our laser target just painted on it, allowing us to guide our missiles in all the way. These aren't fire and forget missiles. These missiles, you have to actually maintain a target lock on the enemy vessel while those missiles are flying. So we are pretty much sitting ducks right now, and if it had decided to use its intercept missiles, we might have had a little bit of trouble here. But for whatever reason, it's deciding to use its main guns, and now it's focusing on the incoming missiles. It manages to take one out, but we get 1 hit, 2 hits, 3 hits, 4 hits. I just cannot stand against the barrage of incoming missiles, and we obliterate the enemy bridge, rendering the naval vessel completely harmless. And as you see, we swap to it, and yeah, the bridge has just been utterly obliterated. Even though the ship itself is still intact, it is incapable of coordinating itself. So now we just fly down and we decide to go in for a 50 cal run just to make sure that everything on that deck is dead and make sure it is completely incapable of harming us in future or being repaired. And sure enough, after a little strafing run, we managed to do a little bit more damage and we completely obliterate the command center of the enemy naval vessel. We're not going to be able to land here though and continue ground operations, well, ground attack operations, because of course those enemy fighters are still in atmosphere. So we're going to head back up to the Spirit of Drados. Now the Spirit of Drados is actually linking up with the Crimson Fleet, because now we've obliterated the Gaian presence in space, there's actually not much else for the Crimson Fleet to do in the Gaian system. So we're going to press on into the inner solar system to a planet called Scorch. Now this is a planet with about 0.5 Gs of gravity and an atmosphere, but with its proximity to Kerbol, the surface is very, very hot and very hostile. And as such, nobody's ever really tried to colonize it, and it's become a bit of a haven for pirates.
Unidentified vessels in Captain Krios' space. Looks like we are going to have to give chase.
And it looks like the pirate lord in charge here has a bit of a passion for poetry. Yeah, we're gonna have to eradicate these pirate scum for the sake of the entire solar system. Not just because they're, you know, pirates, but also because they seem to be doing GCSE English language. So to do that, we are deploying the entirety of the Crimson Fleet, the corvette and skiff carried here by the Spirit of Drados. The Crimson Fleet, of course, is the same as it was last turn. Since we launched a carrier and a colony ship this turn, we haven't had a chance to expand it yet. So a single Eros class corvette carrying torpedoes, a Pluto class corvette carrying torpedoes and 2 30mm chain guns, and a Ceres class skiff with an anti-ship laser, bolstered by 2 Mars class frigates. Now, we didn't actually have a chance to send the Crimson Fleet back to Drados for resupply this turn, since of course they were heading out to Scorch, so they actually haven't been resupplied since last turn. So our Eros class corvette has only got 1 torpedo left, though thankfully the Pluto class has still got both its torpedoes. So we're going to do a similar thing to last time. We're going to start by opening up with our torpedoes, try and take out the main enemy capital ships if they don't have like spaced armor to try and defend against them, or point defense lasers, and then we're going to close with our frigates and try and eradicate what remains with our rail guns. Preston Kerman is of course a brutal tactician, but yeah, he's not particularly flexible. So now we have our intercept. We're just slowing ourselves down to reduce our intercept velocity to about 20-30 meters per second, because we don't want to fly in too fast. We actually want to give ourselves time to fire our torpedoes and cruise in at a relatively leisurely pace. We can always speed up and close the distance a little faster if we need to, but there we go. We performed our retrograde burn. We're just going to get a little closer and then turn around and get ready to begin firing upon the enemy fleet. Now this is a much more powerful fleet than the Gaians. No wonder they're the terror of the inner solar system, these Krios pirates.
Lasers are red, exhaust plasma is blue. The time has come for me to kill you.
On the other hand, they might just be the terror of the inner solar system because nobody can tolerate Captain Krios' terrible poetry. Let's put an end to this pirate lord once and for all. We're going to start with the Eros class firing its last remaining torpedo. Now the enemy fleet is pretty sophisticated. They've got 2 frigates, each boasting 55mm railguns, plus an escorting corvette with some powerful 30mm flat cannons, and finally an escorting skiff with some lasers and a 20mm cannon for torpedo point defense. However, since Scorch is tidally locked to Kerbal, there isn't actually a geostationary orbit for it, so BD Armory is really playing up here, even though we're in the highest orbit possible. Let's just put it down to interference from solar radiation this close to Kerbal.
You let them cut our frigate in half? You morons! Have you the intellect of a giraffe? I'll have to work on that one.
So we're able to get a torpedo past the point defences of the pirate fleet and obliterate their first frigate. But we're not going to stop there. We have 2 more torpedoes where that came from, and it seems that Captain Krios' ability to make coherent rhymes seems to get worse as each of his ships gets destroyed. So, you know, it's just extra incentive to be as accurate as possible with these torpedoes. Now, point defense lasers and the like are, as I said, much more effective when you're in geostationary orbit, because as I said in previous episodes, BD Armory uses the surface of the planet as a reference point to target its weapons. And to all of you who said that's easy to correct for, trust me, it's not. But they're a lot more accurate this time, and they almost managed to take out our torpedo, getting a few hits on the torpedo, but it is not enough, and we managed to strike the second frigate and once again cut it in twain and float off into the void.
Damn it, all I can come up with is photograph. That's no good.
And once again, Captain Krios begins to struggle with his rhyming. So, we've got our last torpedo, and this time we actually have a little bit of trouble targeting a ship for it to fly at. I wanted it to target the corvette, but there's so much debris floating around now, it's messing with our targeting system. AKA, I really struggle to actually click on the enemy craft. So we're going to go for the enemy skiff instead. That's a much smaller target, and we're going to have to be a little bit more accurate. And this time, for some reason, the lasers are a lot better, and they start damaging the warhead at the tip of the torpedo. Thankfully, though, we just about managed to get a hit, but I forgot to arm the torpedo, like an idiot. So we do actually damage the skiff and knock it backwards a bit, but we don't cut it in half or do any significant damage. So now the enemy corvette and the enemy skiff are all that remains, and we're going to have to enter gun range and take them out the old-fashioned way. So we're closing with our frigates first, opening up with those 55mm railguns, but with those short barrels they really are hopelessly inaccurate at this range. They're really only reliable at 5 kilometer distance, which I guess kind of negates the fact that they can fire at 18 kilometers in the first place, and the solar radiation, let's just say, is interfering with our targeting systems, so we're really struggling to hit these 2 pretty small enemy vessels. We really should invest in a destroyer of some kind and get some 155mm railguns in the future, which are far more accurate. But soon enough we close to 10 kilometers and our skiff begins opening up with its anti-ship laser, cutting holes in the enemy skiff, carving it up. Well, I mean, not really. At this kind of range, since, of course, lasers follow an inverse square law, it's really struggling to do much damage. And the enemy skiff isn't content to just sit there and get shot at, and it begins closing upon our fleet at a pretty worrying rate. It fires up its plasma thruster, a method of propulsion that we haven't actually used yet, and starts flying in to get within its own gun range. Of course, once it gets within a couple of kilometers, we open up with our point defense systems and start spraying it with fire. But it opens up with guns of its own and soon opens up on our undefended and unarmored Ceres class skiff, completely obliterating it. Then it decides to accelerate and cut through one of the radiators on one of our Mars class frigates. This is clearly being flown by an insane, crazy pirate with some pretty damn wicked piloting skills. However, while doing a slow down burn to try and come back around and get some more shots, we orient our Pluto class corvette to get our 2 30mm chain guns firing upon it, and that in combination with the railguns from our 2 Mars-class frigates begin to basically hit it with so much fire that we can't actually rotate the craft. All the recoil from being struck by so many bullets means we can't actually turn it round, even with our RCS on full power, to try and orient the 20mm guns. And soon enough, a railgun round slices clean through the cockpit and puts an end to the troublesome skiff that took out our Ceres-class skiff. I mean, it's only a small ship with a mining laser, just repurposed for episode 1, but that skiff has been with us, as I said, since episode 1, cleansing insurrectionists from our moon of Dradus, so I was kind of sad to see it go. The remaining corvette doesn't put up much of a fight though.
Enjoy your victory, you think you've won, but I shall return Dradus scum.
And that is it. That is the end of the episode. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. We finish our turn by launching yet another colony ship to colonize Olay, because of course we get points at the beginning of a turn and points at the end of a turn. So next turn we'll have 2 more points worth of war materials to bolster our military. And if you're wondering, Krios Kerbin was voiced by Marcus House. If you don't know who Marcus House is, he is another KSP YouTuber who, to be honest, he's much more entertaining than me, and he has a buttery, lovely Australian accent. So you should definitely go subscribe to him. A link to his channel is in the description below. Go check him out. He does some awesome stuff, like landing 2 SpaceX boosters on a drone ships, doing Falcon Heavy launches using KOS. He just does some amazing stuff. So honestly, go check him out if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, everyone. I do hope you have enjoyed. I've been the Bearded Penguin, and I will see you all next time.